This is episode 83 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Ali Boone. Ali is a real estate investor, entrepreneur, and a real estate investing coach. 10 years ago, she dumped the 9 to 5 and successfully shifted into real estate investing. She also recently authored the book, Not Your How-To Guide to Real Estate Investing, Life Lessons on Hacking Your Mind. There it is. Before you hack your wallet. Ali, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. We've been looking forward to doing this for a while.
Yeah, it's so hard to connect via email, but hey, we did it. We're here, and I'm really excited to talk to you. I always like to start here, and I want to find out from you, since you had a prior career in aerospace, when was the first time that you remember just being interested in real estate?
So real estate came out, my thought in real estate was a byproduct of my very first, most important thought was before I ever sat down. I was literally the first day of my corporate job as an engineer. Before I ever sat down in the chair in my cubicle, I was like, I have to get out of here. I knew it. I was like, oh man, I just went through like 7 years of school or something. And I was like, I hate this.
Yeah.
Started. And so that exploration of trying to figure out how to get out of corporate, I didn't know how to do that. And at some point along the lines, as I kept reading and I was just scuffling around looking for any answers, it seemed like it was either going to be start a business or do something real estate investing. That those two really seemed to be the tickets out of corporate, whatever that may look like. And I wasn't sure of ironically, I ended up starting a real estate investing business. That was not the plan. But as you know, it was a 5-year journey of trying to figure out my way out of corporate. And obviously there's a lot of details to the story, but real estate I wasn't really planning for it. But the way that it happened was while I was trying to find my way out, I thought, well, while I have a good W-2 paycheck, I might as well do something smart with my money. Because if I leave here, I may not have money for a while. And so I started investing in real estate and not thinking that that was going to be the ticket out. And then, it just kind of snowballed from there where it just really clicked and that it became my thing. And
Well, I mean, but why didn't you quit? That's the important part.
that was my question to myself in the beginning. I think the only saving grace in that was at the exact same time I was doing all this Nicaragua stuff. Like I went to Nicaragua like 5 times in a year and a half. Like I was in on this. I was like, it's my favorite country to date. I love that place.
Yeah.
And right overlapping with that, the company who was working with the developer in Nicaragua had also gotten into turnkey rental properties in the States. And they had approached me a few times. They're like, oh, do you have any interest in those? I was like, oh, that sounds so boring compared to investing in a third world country beachside. Hello, I want a beach bungalow. Yeah. And they kept talking about it. And one thing led to another where when the pre-construction stuff started really to tumble, I had already kind of inquired about the turnkeys because the big market at that time was Atlanta and I was from Atlanta. And so I was like, well, I mean, they're so cheap. Like I'll look into it, as boring as this is. And so there was that slight overlap of I had already bought my first turnkey rental property amidst all of this development stuff. And that kept me going because once I got that first turnkey, it was completely addictive. And I was like, oh, now I'm seeing the excitement of these. And so that really kept me hanging on. But there were a few moments in there where I mean, there were investors in that development that lost millions of their own dollars. I only lost 40 grand, but that was also a really aggressive start to real estate. Yeah. And so I had a mentor at the time and I brought up to him a few times, especially when some things went wrong with the turnkeys. I was like, why am I doing this? And he was like, I hear you. And and so it really was, I've been talking a lot about this. This is a different soapbox, but I've been talking a lot about this recently is investor mindset, because it's important right now while interest rates are high. You have to have an investor's mindset to invest right now versus the last 10 years because it was so easy to invest. Anybody could do it. And that's not the case anymore.
And they did.
And they did. And now they're bitching about it.
Exactly.
It's like,
they're trying to pour salt on all of our good stuff here.
Like,
I mean, come on.
They're like, I won't buy now if it doesn't hit the 1% rule. And I'm like, okay, that's not an investor mindset. But the investor mindset is really important, not only for buying right now, but going back. And there have been multiple times in my real estate career that first $40,000 loss, again, out of the gate is a bit aggressive. That one I had an extended vacancy in one of my properties while I was paying a mortgage the whole time. And I would go to my mentor and I'm like, ugh, this is awful. And he's like, I hear you. And when we'd really sit down and break it all down, it is that investor mindset, is that it's not
Yeah.
black and white about the numbers. And really, that $40,000 I lost, truly, I'm not exaggerating, is I wouldn't have what I have today had it not been for that. I
Yeah.
have full lifestyle design. I work when I want to, when I don't want to. I do work how I want. I've been out of corporate for 11 years at this point. I wouldn't have had any of that without that investment. And so it turned out not to be an apples to apples thing, but I have 100% made my $40,000 back tenfold
Yeah.
when I look at it from the perspective of, I didn't get the beach bungalow. Supposedly it's still coming, but I'm like, it's,
Little late. Yeah. I try to coach people to focus on the asset and to understand that in order to be someone who can evaluate an asset, you need a lot of reps in the field. That means looking at a lot of properties, and it doesn't matter where. If you want to
yeah.
invest in Topeka, Kansas, at least see properties where you are. The prices won't correlate, but at least your ability to understand like where the costs are in a house or what the mess ups are in turnkey, which may cost you later, are really important. Do you agree with that, with the asset mindset?
Oh, 100%. I was thinking as you were talking, like I was telling someone earlier about like people are like, well, how do I decide on what market to invest in? And they like 95% of the people go running out and they're analyzing like crime stats, like all this data. And I just sit there and I'm like, what does all that tell you? Like
Yeah,
it's like a three-part thing. You have data, but if you don't have context for that data, there's no way to
exactly.
interpret it. And you need that
Yeah,
interpretation. So like, what does all of that tell you? And everyone's like, well, I don't know. And so when you go
yeah,
with that asset mindset, like I'm funny that I'm an engineer and I love a good spreadsheet, but I hate details. I do not
yeah, yeah,
spreadsheet like I'll verify all the numbers, but like finding a market, I was literally telling them, like, yeah, you can go do it the scientific way or the spreadsheet way. I'm like, I just start asking around. And if someone says,
yeah,
I like this market, I'll be like, oh, let me check into it. I work backwards. I work from the bigger picture. And I think that's what you're talking about is that asset mindset. And like rental properties, we don't really have to go into the details of this, but rental properties profit in 5 different ways. And when you understand each of those 5 profit centers, you're going to be able to better analyze the deal because everyone's focused on that cash flow profit center. And they're
yeah,
like, well, it doesn't meet the 1% rule. I'm out. And I'm like, that is horribly naive
yeah.
because there are 4 other ways like you have to look at it from all the ways. And that's what I feel like you're saying with asset mindset is looking at the big picture because it's not one factor that makes or breaks an investment. It's the big picture kind of thing.
Hit
We'll
me with
circle up
the
on that.
yeah, hit me with the 5 ways that these rental properties can help people.
Yeah, so the 5 profit centers, let's be honest, they're sexy. I mean, just for the fact that a rental property makes money in 5 different ways, to me is very sexy.
Yeah,
So you kind of alluded to, so there's 5. The first 2, cash flow and appreciation. Those 2 are the ones that tie more into your strategy of like you said, you're an appreciation investor. Most of the people I work with are cash flow investors. I'm a combo. I like mixing them up.
yeah,
So you have cash flow, which for people, that's when the income on a rental property, if the income surpasses your expenses every month and you're literally putting cash in your pocket and there's negative cash flow if you're losing money every month. So cash flow, appreciation, which everybody's pretty familiar with, tax benefits, equity build via mortgage pay down, and hedging against
mm.
inflation. They get progressively a little more difficult to understand, not difficult, but like hedging against inflation. I can never give an elevator speech about that. But like tax benefits, like residential rental properties are one of the most advantageously classed advantageously taxed asset classes in the entire tax system. And so the tax benefits that you get are just tremendous. So you're actually pocketing money depending on, exactly your setup. Everyone's financial situation is a little different, but you're pocketing money in profits just from the tax benefits alone. Equity build via mortgage pay down. If you have a mortgage on the property, your tenant. So, when you have a mortgage, you have equity. And if let's say you buy under market, you have equity in the property. As appreciation happens, you have equity in the property. All the while appreciation's happening, all those things, your tenants are paying down your mortgage. So the more your mortgage gets paid down, the more equity you have in the property. It's not liquid, but it's a thing. And so 30 years down the road, you now own this asset free and clear, and someone else paid that whole mortgage and all the equity is yours. And then hedging it gets inflation. This is the one I can't give an elevator speech on, but basically the short of it is the more inflation goes up, the more profitable your rental property is. Because let's say you buy a property for $100,000 today, and X number of years forward, $100,000 is only worth the equivalent of $70,000. You're still paying that back in the old dollars worth. Like now you're only paying $70,000 back. So like inflation, like owning real estate is one of the few ways. Like inflation is really kind of boning us on everything else, groceries, deodorant, like everything else. But like the more inflation happens, the more profitable my properties are because of the way that the dollar works. So yeah. So when you have those 5 things, so when you look at those 5, like you said, your appreciation investor, the cash flow and appreciation, those play more into your initial strategy of, like I said, I like both. I want cash flow, but I am willing to sacrifice a heck of a lot of cash flow if the appreciation potential is higher, which means higher quality house, higher quality neighborhood, less tenant drama, all that kind of stuff. If you're just an appreciation investor, let's say in Southern California, which is all you're going to have the option to be, is, that's a different strategy. If you're only a cash flow investor, so those play into your strategy. And the other 3 really are kind of like the secondary, but they make a big difference. And the sexiness of the profit centers for me really comes in when I hit the 10-year mark on my properties. I did kind of a 10-year look back, and I will tell you what, I saw 2 things. The first one was I highly underestimated the power of rent increases. I knew about them, but so like my first turnkey property that I ever bought was renting for $975 at the time. It's rented now for either $1,800 or $1,900.
Wow.
And the house I used
over
to own,
10 years?
Yeah. And
that's crazy.
The house that I used to own was renting originally during the crash for $995, and it just re-rented for $2,100. And I was like, and now not all of the houses got, like I've got one Section 8, and the climb on that one is painful. But like, and my property managers weren't raising the rents as much as they should. But so I've got some that haven't been that successful. But either way, the power of the rent increase, I was like, because that cash flow bar all of a sudden is like through the roof. And the second thing that I saw with 10 years is the compounding effect of those profit centers. So it's not just a linear increase. The reason people get wealthy in real estate is when all 5 of those profit centers start really working together, it becomes an exponential climb over time. It's not just like a, linear creep. And so that's what I really saw looking back. I was like, oh, because I knew about all those profit centers, but I hadn't really had the like real-time experience with them. And that I was like, this is where the money is. So when you're analyzing deals, it is so behooving to look at at least rental property deals. It's so behooving to look at all 5 of those because that plays into that investor mindset. You can't just invest for cash flow. You can't just invest for appreciation. They all work together, and that can help you strategize. Like the interest rates being high right now, guess what? That's the cash flow bar. That's it. We got a whole lot of other stuff working for us, and there's ways to navigate around the interest rates. So that's when you start kind of that's when the engineering comes in handy. It's like you start moving these puzzle pieces around of like, how am I going to make this work? And that's what an investor mindset is.